Please leave, it's too cramped in here, Sarah said with a laugh, wearing the most smug and unsettling smile I had ever seen. As I stood there shocked, Sarah repeated herself. It didn't make sense to me why I had to leave when it was my house. This is my house, you know. What are you talking about? I know this house is in Charlie's name, she retorted. I was internally appalled at Sarah's audacity. Even though I had explained it when we got married, it seemed she hadn't been listening at all. Fine, I'll leave, I said with a sigh, watching as his furniture, overflowing with Sarah's tastes, was moved in. Sarah was jumping for joy. It would have been nice if Charlie was here, but unfortunately, he was away on a business trip. He said he wouldn't be back for a month, so the discussion could wait until then. Well then, take care. With that, I left the home filled with memories. My destination was already decided. I'm looking forward to Charlie's reaction when he returns. My name is Gracie, a 65-year-old housewife. Thanks to working until I was 60, I receive a decent pension, and the vast inheritance from my husband, who passed away 5 years ago, allows me to live a comfortable life. My husband was born into a wealthy family and was a landlord with several properties. Despite having enough wealth to live without working, he was frugal and loved to work. During the child-rearing years, I would sometimes get frustrated with him for being so absorbed in his work, but I always loved him for his willingness to tackle difficult challenges with a smile. It's been 5 years since my husband passed away in October that year due to a traffic accident. Coincidentally, it was on our wedding anniversary. I can't get the image of the crushed cake box at the scene out of my head. He left behind a vast inheritance, compensation, and our precious son, Charlie. Charlie is 40 this year and works for a major company. After my husband's sudden death 5 years ago, Charlie went through a tough time, getting cheated on and divorced by his then-wife. Heartbroken, Charlie briefly sought counseling. I worried he might quit his job, but then he met Sarah and quickly seemed to recover. As they started dating, since getting married last year, he's been even more motivated at work and appears to have fully bounced back. Sarah, my son's wife, is a single mother with 2 boys aged 2 and 5. Charlie, who loves kids, had already become close with them, and I found them incredibly adorable. Charlie had been unable to have children due to an illness in his childhood, so the prospect of having grandchildren filled me with immense joy. I thought Sarah was quite generous, although she sometimes made remarks that raised my eyebrows. I believed she was essentially kind-hearted. Charlie felt the same, and that seemed to be the consensus among everyone, so it never crossed my mind that things could turn out the way they did. After getting married, Charlie and Sarah moved into a property near our house. I had suggested they live in a house owned by my husband. We want to start in a home we've chosen ourselves, Charlie insisted. According to Charlie, Sarah has a fondness for cute things, and none of the available properties matched her tastes. When I first heard this, I was puzzled. However, considering they were newlyweds with children, I decided not to dwell on it too much, thinking they deserved to enjoy their preferred lifestyle. Charlie was often busy with work and had to travel frequently. Whenever he was away, Sarah would come over with the kids for dinner. The grandchildren were very well-mannered and obedient, however, Sarah was the complete opposite. She helped herself to food and routinely rummaged through our closets as if it were normal. She even went as far as to enter our bedroom and take my jewelry. This shocked me, and I felt compelled to address it. Sarah suddenly burst into tears. I just wanted to get along with you. Please don't hate me. Faced with Sarah's crying, I ended up comforting her, and the matter was left unresolved. I kept this incident from Charlie, and since Sarah didn't take anything else after that, I decided to keep it to myself. About 6 months into their marriage, Sarah began sending the kids over to stay with us frequently. She would call suddenly the day before and hang up quickly, making it difficult to refuse. Reluctantly, I found myself taking care of the kids each time. Though the children remained obedient, their behavior during meals had changed significantly from when we first met. They ate noisily and often dropped food outside their plates despite their previously good manners. I had to remind them numerous times. The children would listen reluctantly but revert to their old ways by the next visit. This cycle left me feeling somewhat exasperated. Yet, Sarah seemed unbothered and would leave her children at our home before disappearing quickly. Initially, Sarah showed her face, but after a few times, she began sending the kids over by themselves. "Sarah, it's fine for the kids to come over, but I'd really appreciate it if you could come along sometimes." "But I'm pretty busy," Sarah responded evasively to my comment. That night, I received an unusual call from Charlie. "Hey, Mom, could you try to be a bit more gentle with Sarah?" "What do you mean?" I was puzzled. I believed I had been more than kind, however, it seemed Charlie didn't perceive it that way. "Sarah feels pressured to show her face often because she's afraid of being put to work like in her previous marriage. She had a rough time with her ex-husband's family, so please don't push her too hard." "Really? Okay, I understand." It appeared my words had been misconstrued by Sarah. I replied to Charlie with mixed feelings, and the next day, Sarah sent the kids over to our house again. By the time they had been married for a year, the kids were spending half the week with us. Meanwhile, Sarah would only show her face a few times a month for about 10 minutes. I harbored some mistrust towards Sarah, who was always too busy to talk. When I asked the children about Sarah's plans, they would just shake their heads with a guilty look at first. I asked a few times, but seeing their faces made me feel so guilty that I couldn't bring myself to pry any further. Then one day, Sarah showed up unusually with Charlie. We sat down for coffee and had a pleasant chat after a long while. That's when Charlie said, "I've got something to say." He looked serious. "The kids seem to have grown quite attached to Mom, and I'm often away on business trips, so I can't spend much time with them. If you are okay with it, I'd like you to move in and help Sarah out." "What do you think?" "Move in? Well, what about Sarah?" I was so surprised by the sudden suggestion of living together that I nearly dropped my coffee cup. Yet, maintaining my composure, I turned to Sarah. "Gracie has always been a great help, and I would really like to ask for her help too." "Is that so? Then I'll think about it." Charlie seemed pleased with my response. Being the kind person he is, he must be worried about me too. I thought about it for a couple of days and ultimately decided to accept the offer to move in. After that, we started throwing away unnecessary items and setting up rooms for Charlie's family and the children. The cleanup was finished earlier than expected with the kids' help, but the effort left me with muscle pain every day, a reminder of my age. Despite the struggle, I managed to clear out the 2 rooms. While I was busy cleaning, Sarah didn't offer any help at all. My unease about living with Sarah grew as I observed her lack of participation. Then came moving day. As the movers carried in the boxes, Sarah pulled me aside to the garden. With a puzzled look, I turned to her, only to be met with a malicious smile. Unbelievably, she said something I couldn't fathom. "Please leave. It's too cramped in here," laughed Sarah. It was the most smug and unsettling smile I had ever seen. As I stood there shocked, Sarah repeated herself. Why should I leave when it was my house? I was baffled. "This is my house, you know." "What are you talking about?" "I know this house is in Charlie's name," she retorted. Sarah's claim left me internally exasperated. Despite having explained everything when we got married, she seemed not to have listened at all. "All right then, I'll leave," I said with a sigh, watching as furniture filled with Sarah's taste was being moved in. Sarah was jumping for joy. It would have been better if Charlie was here, but unfortunately, he was on a business trip today. He said he wouldn't be back for a month, so the discussion could wait until then. Well then, take care. Saying that, I left the home filled with memories. My destination was already decided. I was looking forward to seeing Charlie's reaction upon his return. I immediately moved my belongings into my new house. The new home was a villa we had visited once with my husband, a place filled with memories, including where he proposed. While it didn't hold as many memories as our previous home, it had a special place in my heart, and we had promised to spend our second life here. I finished unpacking everything and relaxed alone on the sofa. The place was very comfortable, thanks to the caretaker's maintenance. I was a bit sad not to see the children anymore, but I was prepared to cut ties depending on Charlie's response. A month flew by, and around the time Charlie's business trip was over, he called me. I picked up the phone feeling a bit nervous. "Mom, where are you? There's no room for you here, and we were supposed to be living together. What's going on? Hasn't Sarah told you anything?" When I got back, Mom wasn't here, and Sarah just cries without giving me any answers. "Well then, come to this address I'm about to give you." I gave Charlie the address and hung up. The next day, Charlie visited my new home with Sarah and the children. When I opened the door, I saw Charlie with a slightly sullen expression and Sarah, who was pale. "This house is welcome." "Sarah, is something the matter?" No, nothing." Sarah was clearly tense, while the children looked around curiously, especially the 5-year-old, who seemed utterly fascinated. I led Charlie's family into the living room. Seeing the fully furnished space, Charlie seemed to realize I had no intention of living together. "Hey Mom, why did you suddenly decide to end the living arrangement?" "Well, Sarah should know that better than anyone, shouldn't she?" I said, and Charlie scratched his head with a slightly irritated expression before starting to recount what he had heard from Sarah. "Sarah said you didn't like her taste in furniture, right? But it was just our room, so couldn't you have just let it be? She said she had to buy more furniture for the living room because you left." "Oh, she added more furniture, did she?" I looked in Sarah's direction and she twitched. However, her lips were slightly curved upwards. She probably thought that without proof, Charlie wouldn't believe the truth coming from me. "Sarah, why lie?" I haven't lied about anything," Sarah said, bursting into tears. Charlie consoled her, seeming to regard me as the troublemaker, but the grandchildren hanging their heads behind them didn't look at Sarah. I let out a big sigh. "Sarah, stop the fake crying. The children can see through it." "That's terrible, Charlie." "I'm really not lying, believe me," Sarah said, jumping into Charlie's arms, burying her face against him and pleading. Though her face wasn't visible, her voice didn't sound like she was crying at all. I was irritated with Charlie for consoling Sarah. "Mom, Sarah might have done something wrong, but I don't think it's right to just leave because you're unhappy. Can't we reconcile?" "Well, I do owe you an apology for leaving without saying anything, but any reconciliation with Sarah will have to wait until you hear this." I said this and tapped my mobile phone. Instantly, a voice played out loud. Hearing it, Sarah's face went pale. "You recorded it." I happened to press the video button. Actually, I was trying to record a video of the children running around when Sarah pulled me aside, so the recording continued unintentionally. The voice coming from my mobile phone sounded malicious, unlike Sarah's usual voice. Charlie looked utterly confused, alternating his gaze between my mobile phone and Sarah. "Sarah is the one who told me to leave. I was just complying." "Is this really Sarah?" "It can't be." Charlie pushed away Sarah, who was clinging to him, and questioned her, but Sarah remained silent, looking down. Charlie grew increasingly frustrated and raised his voice. "Sarah, answer me. It's not true. Are you taking Gracie's side?" Sarah managed to squeeze out a voice to blame Charlie, but the voice in the recording clearly called out the children's names, leaving no room for escape. As Charlie tried to get the truth out and Sarah evaded, the cycle grew tiresome. Finally, an exasperated Sarah let something slip. "I never wanted to live with someone else in the first place." "What? You were the one who wanted to live with Mom." I was shocked to hear this new information, but soon Sarah defiantly provided her reason. "Of course, I couldn't understand why Gracie was living in a house in your name while we had to rent. I wanted a house of our own." It seemed she was concerned about being ridiculed for living in a rental after remarrying. Charlie had rented a high-end condominium in the area costing about $4,000 a month, yet Sarah seemed to scorn it just because it was a rental, giving me a different kind of headache. Now defiant, Sarah glared at me. "And now Gracie is harassing me. This is the house I've always dreamed of. Why are you living here?" Charlie looked perplexed by Sarah's words. Unlike Charlie, I clearly explained to Sarah, who was acting like a cat in a fight, why. "Because this was originally a property owned by my husband." "That's a lie because this place is." Sarah was probably thinking of the caretaker. I showed Sarah a photo on my mobile phone. Seeing the person in the photo, Sarah exclaimed, "Father." My husband had passed away before Charlie remarried, so Sarah had never met him. She had never called my husband father. Therefore, the father Sarah referred to must be the children's paternal grandfather. The photo showed Sarah's father and me shaking hands. It was taken as a memento when we moved in. Sarah looked at me, her face turning pale. "How do you know him?" "Because he's the caretaker here, obviously." Hearing this, Sarah sat down on the spot. Charlie also seemed unable to grasp the situation. "This is a good opportunity." I decided to continue. "We talked when we moved in. That's when I found out he's your ex-husband's father and the real reason for your divorce too." "The real reason for the divorce?" Charlie's voice echoed in surprise. Sarah, who had stopped trying to pretend, became suddenly flustered by my words. "Gracie, there must be some misunderstanding." "I'm sorry. Let's go home together, Mom." Sarah tried to interrupt, but Charlie looked at me earnestly and asked. It would have been less damaging for Sarah if this had come to light later, but I had no intention of showing mercy. I told the grandchildren to play in the garden. They looked at Jennifer but nodded at my words and went outside. I waited until the children were completely outside playing, then turned back to Sarah. I heard from Sarah that it was her husband's infidelity, but in fact, it was Sarah who had an affair. Charlie was shocked, and Sarah shook and looked away. "I can't believe this, Gracie. Why would you lie about?" "Oh, I also have a copy of the notarized document here." I pulled out the document from a drawer and handed it to Charlie. Charlie's face turned pale as he read through the document. "What's this?" "Compensation. Custody to be discussed again once the child can choose. Meeting before remarrying." I wasn't informed about any of this, right? The other family said they hadn't heard about the remarriage either. Sarah looked down, her face turning white. Charlie sighed and turned to Sarah, his gaze devoid of the initial kindness. "Hey, when I got divorced because I was cheated on, what did you say? That the cheater is to blame? Unforgivable, right?" "Yeah, and then didn't you say I would never cheat?" Sarah had a look of not knowing how to answer. Charlie grew increasingly heated in response to Sarah's silence. "So, the story about divorcing to escape from your husband's infidelity and extreme control, putting the kids at risk, was also a lie. What's that about?" I had to say that, or you wouldn't have dated me, right?" "Of course not." Charlie yelled back, overlapping Sarah's desperate response. In contrast to Charlie, who was breathing heavily from excitement, Sarah started to sulk defiantly. As I heard, you've been refusing visits since you started dating Charlie, and apparently you've been leaving all the housework and childcare to his family. Now you tried to dump it on me after remarrying. Why do you have to say unnecessary things? Because of you, Charlie is mad at me. Sarah yelled at me loudly, to which Charlie cast a cold glance. Sarah's unguarded outburst revealed a starkly different image from the one she had maintained. It's over between us. Let's get a divorce. What? No, I don't want a divorce. Sarah clung to Charlie, who tried to shake her off impatiently. Yet Sarah persisted. Just as Charlie's frustration seemed about to explode, an unexpected person entered. Mom, you're saying the same things you told Dad. You've got a new boyfriend now, so stop bothering Charlie. Tommy, Sarah's eldest son, spoke with a maturity beyond his 5 years. I wasn't the only one surprised by his sudden return from the garden. What? Why are you saying unnecessary things, Tommy? What do you mean by a new boyfriend? Stopping Sarah's angry retort, Charlie squatted down and asked Tommy, looking a bit perplexed. Tommy spoke again. Whenever Charlie's not here, Mom tells me to go to Grandma's house. Then Mom's boyfriend comes to pick me up. Don't tell lies, Tommy. Charlie hugged Tommy and glared at Sarah, who was taken aback by his genuine anger. Anyway, let's discuss the rest later, including the boyfriend and the compensation. With him involved, it's not like that. I love you. It was just a little fling with that guy. Huh, that guy. Sarah looked regretful at Charlie's remark. Charlie stood up, shielding Tommy, and looked coldly at Sarah. Then, forcibly dragging her, he kicked her out of the house. Wait, Charlie, open the door. The next time we talk will be with a lawyer involved. I'll let the kids see their father. I've already contacted my parents. They're coming to pick them up. Wait, what do my parents have to do with this? Sarah kept knocking on the door for a while, but soon the noise stopped. Shortly after, I could hear arguing voices followed by the doorbell ringing. Sarah's parents were standing there, apologized, and after entrusting the grandchildren to me, took Sarah back with them. The grandchildren were safely introduced to Sarah's ex-husband's family afterward. It seems Sarah had changed her phone number and moved without notice since she started dating Charlie, making it impossible to contact her. Her ex-husband and his parents burst into tears and embraced the children the moment they saw them. Although Charlie had already adopted the children, transferring custody to Sarah's ex-husband took some time due to the process. Sarah was strictly reprimanded by her parents and now works live-in at a relative's hotel, ensuring she can't run away again. It's a family-run business, and with high alimony payments to Charlie and her ex-husband, she reportedly has almost no time off except for meals. I can't stand it anymore. I want to quit. She often complains like this, but her relatives are said to be strict with her. Charlie, having gone through his second divorce, has sworn off marriage and thrown himself into his work. Though he still seems to be recovering from the shock, I recently found out he's reconnected with a childhood friend who lived nearby. 10 years younger, they occasionally go out for meals. This childhood friend even visited me to say hello. It turns out she's been in love with Charlie since they were kids, never having a boyfriend because of her feelings for him. It's heartwarming to know the cute girl who used to say she'd marry Charlie still holds those feelings into adulthood. As a parent, it makes me incredibly happy, and Charlie seems a bit pleased too. As for me, I cherish every day living in the house where I was proposed to. The house, altered by Sarah's changes, has been completely rebuilt and now rents out as a property. Living alone, I never feel lonely, almost as if my husband is still close by. I'm looking forward to enjoying the second phase of my life, so I have plenty of stories to share with my husband when we're reunited.